Good. Hello. This is Dr. Julius Bailey, and welcome to Straight No Chaser with Dr. Julius Bailey. We are, as usual, on the campus of Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio. I am blessed and privileged to be here on this chilly day as we celebrate our second day of voting here in Ohio. Um, Wherever you are, hopefully you are about to or you are engaged in the process. It is very important that your voice is heard and that your ideas are manifest. Today's show is a very thorough show, so I'm not going to take too much time on the front end, but I do want to remind you that we do have a sponsor for today's show. As I told you on Monday, he asked to be anonymous, but he is a colleague here at Wittenberg who, I said he this time, he's a colleague at Wittenberg who certainly is always supportive, and he wanted to support the show. Remember, this is a sponsor-driven show. We've been now over 34 episodes. We interview some of the greatest minds and activists in the country. We don't charge a dime. We just ask you to support the show. And so if you're willing to support the show, either a day or 2 days, or be a name partner of the show, please let me know. I'm just going to get right into our show today. I have some commentary over all the coronavirus in the White House and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we have the a debate tonight with the VP debate, so pay attention to all that. But we're just going to go right into our show. James Carter is a nationally recognized and accomplished. He is a civil rights attorney, but also he is a trial attorney, right? Sort of a civil trial attorney, I think is the best way to look at it, even though obviously some of his work deals with civil rights. He does work in civil trials. He is the managing partner at the Cochran firm. Yes, Johnny Cochran. He is a managing partner of the Cochran firm. Attorney Carter has tried to verdict, settled, and has been associated with multiple sort of high value cases, right? He told me he has some ranging from 1 million to 70 million, right? This is a serious brother here. His civil rights act, his civil trial acumen has gained him elite memberships into some of the biggest sort of advocate forums and sort of big National Bar Association trial advocacy camps, and he's just all around engaged and involved. He's an adjunct professor at the Howard University School of Law and sits on the Howard University School of Law Board of Visitors. Speaking of Howard University, actually, it was there that I met this brother way back in the early 90s in the philosophy department. I want to welcome to Straight No Chaser my brother, lawyer, attorney extraordinaire, James Carter. How you doing, man?
I am so good, man. It is so good to see you, Dr. Bailey, man. I'm just honored to be here.
Man, I am just privileged to have you on the show. Man, I wish you had told me back in undergrad that I should have went to law school with you, man, and I could have rode your coattail to excellence.
You can still go. You can still go to law school.
Oh man, I'm too old for all that, man. You know, I'm definitely too old. I'm going to bed at 8 o'clock at night. I ain't got time to be studying nothing this late, man. But it is so good to see you, man, and I'm grateful that you gave us some time on the show. Let's just jump into it. I know you have another commitment. So let's just kind of talk a little bit about you. You are a homeboy from New Orleans, right?
Yes.
Where you went to McDonough College Prep High School. And I know those folk are proud of you. I understand you are also on your high school wall of fame, man. I need to tell my high school to step their game up, you know. So if you in Chicago and you from Quigley South or Thornwood, y'all need to listen. I need to be on the wall of fame, man. Y'all tripping, right? There, New Orleans, right? The City Business magazine has recognized you as a legal scholar and legal leader. You do all kind of work, man. Tell us, you are a philanthropist, right? There in New Orleans, giving out scholarships to aspiring law students. Man, how does it feel, right, to sort of be a homeboy in New Orleans with international recognition, but yet still there with your people?
Well, that's, back, first of all, I want to say, man, you all don't understand. I don't know if they understand or not what a treasure you have in Dr. Bailey. He was a leader going all the way back to the 90s at Howard University, early 90s, late 80s at Howard University. And I am so grateful to spend a little time with you all today with my brother, Dr. Bailey. Well, I feel extremely blessed. Most of all, I guess I'm blessed for the foundation that my parents gave me, that we find that what we have in our households and our families, the principles we're taught, how we are our upbringings, basically have universal appeal. And because of that, I could be from the neighborhoods in New Orleans and have some general characteristics that I was taught and trained and augmented from folks like yourself in my association at Howard University that has universal appeal, which brings me to different parts of the world to present, etc. So I'm just a brother from New Orleans who had an opportunity. Great educators will tell you there's no difference in human beings. It's only opportunity and exposure. Opportunity, exposure, that's it. Just give the folks opportunity and exposure, and what's going to happen is that you'll see them soar with the eagles.
No, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful response there, man. And so I know one of your first jobs, I don't know if it was your first, but one of your first jobs out of law school, you served as a staff trial counsel for the New Orleans Indigent Defenders Program. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that choice and what lesson you learned doing that kind of work, which I call God's work, right?
Yeah, coming out of Howard, we are trained from the late, great Charles Hamilton Houston. Just to say a little bit about Charles Hamilton Houston. Charles Hamilton Houston was the great dean of Howard University School of Law. He was the mentor of Thurgood Marshall and many others. And he put Howard on the map in a big time way. And he also actually was the person who created the strategic framework for the ultimate winning Brown v. Board of Education decision of 1954. And what is it inculcated in our brains at Howard University School of Law is that a lawyer is either a social engineer or a parasite on society. That is a quote from the late, great Charles Hamilton Houston. So coming out of Howard University, I had the thrust in the position from my upbringing and coming from Howard that we had to be social engineers. And that brought me into criminal defense to hit head on the very negative ramifications of the various societal issues that we have. And that is a lack of education, lack of recreational opportunities, economic opportunities, racial racism, etc. And what results from that is a deluge of African-American males caught up in the criminal justice system. I wanted to enter that and see what I could do to defend and also sort of give these African-American men in particular some inspiration to evolve out of that condition to be more productive citizens in society. So that's what caused me to enter into public defense. And it was an extraordinary experience. I got to see what was really going on. Back in 2011, the Department of Justice issued a report studying 100 homicides in the city of New Orleans. And what was found is that most of the homicides were among people who knew one another, African-American males. They all often came from broken families, lacked education, etc. So my entry into the public defense realm was to address those issues. And I had a modicum of success there. And from there, I went on to become a city councilman where I helped to change policies in the criminal justice system, as well as the criminal justice commissioner, the first African-American criminal justice commissioner in the city's history. And I was charged with developing policies, et cetera, to help to reduce the amount of homicides between African-American males.
Wow, that's good stuff, brother. And I mean, I'm kind of going off the record here for a minute, but a lot of this, I mean, obviously that quote by Charles Hamilton Houston, I do want to put that in our chat. And you said that quote was, a lawyer can either be a social engineer or a parasite on society,
Yeah.
right? So we have law students who we have pre-law students who will be watching this video, and probably just law students as well that'll be watching this hour. Can you just like speak to them just as an OG now in the legal field? Yeah, I mean you're young too, but you're still an OG in this legal thing, man. I mean, what should they be thinking about as you thought of Charles Hamilton Hughes? Because not everybody's going to be going to Howard Law School, right? And so they're going to be going to law schools all across the country, some state schools, and not really thinking about the ways in which you were trained at Howard with other folk. Talk to them about what that quote should mean to them. You told what it means to you, but what should they think about when they're going into law school?
Well, first of all, I would suggest that they put an application into the great Howard University School of Law, and that we at Howard University School of Law are inculcated with exactly that. We are charged with being social engineers as per the late great Charles Hamilton Houston. What is interesting in that, social engineering for me brought me into the political realm, the statesman realm relative to policies, et cetera, from the city level. From a national level, we sort of influence policies in other areas with regard to criminal justice reform, et cetera, and police oversight. And we'll talk about that in a second. But social engineering does not necessarily mean that you have to be a civil rights attorney per se, or you have to be a person that is going to involve themselves in criminal defense per se. But what it does mean, no matter what your station in life, what your vocation becomes, whether it's a corporate attorney, transactional attorney, whether you are an engineer or a doctor or whatever, you are charged with utilizing your education to better the society, and particularly the despised, the rejected, the unloved, the unwanted, and the vestige of racism, et cetera, particularly related to the African-American community, relative to what Charles Hamilton Houston said.
Right.
It doesn't matter what school you go to. It doesn't matter what your occupation is. But specifically, as he was talking about attorneys, he was referring specifically to being able to fight legal battles, et cetera, on behalf of those individuals who are deprived of certain rights. On the front of the criminal court building in the city of New Orleans, there's a quote that says, "The foundation of liberty is based upon the impartial administration of justice."
Oh, okay.
Administration of justice. All right. So we try to impart justice in an impartial way to address many of the ills in society. And Charles Hamilton Houston would say that all of these persons who enter the legal realm and otherwise are charged with being social engineers.
I want to thank you for that, man. I got a surprise for you, man. Somebody called in right now who wants to say hello to you. Do you have him there? Ladies and gentlemen, here in... Man. Do you see him?
Well, look, I'm in high cotton now, brother.
Hey, how you doing, James? How you doing, Dr. Bailey?
I'm good. Ladies and gentlemen, Straight No Chaser, we have attorney Michael Wright. Y'all know him here in Ohio and all around. He and James Carter are both members of the Cochran group. Y'all go ahead and talk for about a minute. How y'all doing? Go ahead.
Man, look, let me say this. Michael Wright is one of the preeminent attorneys, not only here in your locality, but around the country and around the world, man. What a blessing to see this good brother on the line, and to know that you all know each other is wonderful, man. This is no question. You're making me feel like I'm something, man.
Mike.
Right. I will just echo that. James Carter is doing great work across the country, fighting for civil rights, fighting for justice for folks all around the country. And Dr. Bailey, I was surprised when I saw his face come up on your that you're having him on. Now I'm in high cotton. So that's great, bro. I look forward to seeing you, James, very soon.
No, but certainly, James, man. You know, obviously, you know, you and I got, you know, we have our background to Howard, but Mike, man, here in Ohio has been a supporter of everything that I do, man. He's and I watch him and he watches me. And, when you talk about Charles Hamilton Houston's work as to what it is that one of the goals or one of the things that a lawyer should do, as you know, Michael Wright does that. I mean, he is a philanthropist here in the area. He gives out scholarships. He's at every event. Everybody who's anybody knows that brother. This brother, Mike, I still want to know how you get a commercial on Super Bowl Sunday, man.
Hey, it just took a pen and a checkbook. That's it.
But no, man, I know you driving, man. I don't want to hold you, but I do want to thank you for stopping by and saying hello to your colleague. And now to know that we're all in a union together, I'm just mad I didn't go to law school. Now I'm mad. Now I could have been with you.
It's never too late.
Yeah, that's what James said. But I'm approaching 50, man. I'm a little too old for all that. But Mike, man, you be safe driving, Mike, man, and. I'm sure you made James's day today.
Yeah. Man, thanks for having me on, Doc. And James, we'll talk soon, brother.
Yes, sir.
All right. Talk to you guys. Thanks.
All right, brother.
What's interesting about that, Doc, is that, Mike is an extraordinary attorney. It's just, man, that is beautiful. I didn't expect to see my brother come on a day like that, but man, it's good to see that you are connected to some people that mean a lot to me. Charles Hamilton Houston is such a giant. We talked about social engineering. There is a book that Johnny Cochran wrote called A Lawyer's Life.
Okay.
It's the book I used as my course book for my class at Howard. And I did this before I even became a partner. I didn't even know I was going to be a partner in the law firm. So 4 years ago, when I started teaching my class, I chose A Lawyer's Life. In the beginning, acknowledgments in the book, Johnny Cochran acknowledges Charles Hamilton Houston. He acknowledges Thurgood Marshall and the late great Justice Damon Keith, all Howard University people. So this is just a wonderful thing. And thank you for the opportunity just to talk a little bit about these giants, along with the giant Michael Wright.
No question, man. No question. So look, man, what's interesting about your work is that I know, like I said, you start off doing some legal defense work, and then somehow you but you also have been lauded across the world, but certainly across America. You're sort of known as sort of a high stakes counsel, right? When something's big going on and they need a sort of a legal genius, they call you, man. What does it feel like to be able to sort of, you are one of, you are designated as one of the top 100 Black lawyers in America. I'm so proud of you, man. And I just, like I said, it just makes me smile. But what does it feel like to know that, I know you still got work to do, but to know that your work is paying off and that you are sort of leading the way across America?
Well, I'm very grateful and very blessed. I didn't pop out of a toaster though. If you go back way to undergrad, you helped me. I don't know if you remember, you helped me a lot in undergrad to make sure I got through that program at the time. And it's really been a collective of the entire community that put me up and propped me up in a way. I have great mentors like the great Yolande Dillon, who was my high school counselor. But of course, everybody who was able to do anything with me was based upon the foundation of my parents, my grandparents, my siblings, Professor Reginald Robinson, who gave me uplift when I was at the school, and it was a tough time when I was in law school when I first got there. My challenges overcame challenges there, but it really feels good to be in a position whereby you're called upon to deal with issues where individuals are aggrieved and hurting based upon the wrong of others. Particularly in the civil rights realm, I'm dealing with a big case up in Shreveport, which is where Johnny Cochran was born, actually. And in that case, Tommy McLaughlin was beaten by law enforcement and caused him to die unnecessarily from what should have been a routine sort of deal to deal with a person that had a mental disorder, but he ended up dead. And so to be able to militate for justice in situations like that and situations like that, it makes me feel really good. And the other thing is that most times when you see these matters, you don't realize, you don't really get to see the long-term effects on families. So
Right.
we develop great relationships with families, et cetera. And we're not afraid to go into very tough situations, whether in urban areas or rural areas, to fight on behalf of those who need us most.
Right. And I know you're on the civil side of these cases, and then even the McLaughlin case. But let me just make sure I'm right. In that case, recently those officers were indicted. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's the criminal side of it, and there's the civil side. So the district attorney, James Stewart, and we want to thank him on behalf of the family and myself for putting this matter before a grand jury in what's called Cato Parish. You know, we have parishes instead of counties
Right.
here in Louisiana. And it came back with an indictment of 4 officers involved with the untimely death of our client. And those indictments included negligent homicide for all 4, as well as malfeasance in office, which is historic. You know, in the Breonna Taylor case, the officers never got directly indicted for homicide, murder, etc., though they should have. Some of them should have, who was involved in that. So in this case, in northern Louisiana, in a rural area in Louisiana, the citizens of Cato Parish, which is the parish that enshrouds Shreveport, came back and said, you know, we're tired of this. This is a new day, and justice needs to be done, and these people need to be indicted.
No question. Man, that's good work, man. And I'm sure that family appreciates you working on behalf of them and all those who you worked before. Man, the last question, I know you got to go. So last question, I just want to ask you, I know that you are, like I said, involved with, with young attorneys who are attempting to go to law school. I know also you are, you sort of do, you're teaching of everything you've done, man. You've worked in various aspects, the weed and seed program. You've done so much. Like, is there? I mean, obviously you're a father and a husband, so that's probably the pinnacle of your success. But of all the positions and areas you've been able to navigate through as a lawyer, has there been a favorite?
That's a good question. First of all, as you said, as a father, let me give a shout out to Bryce Carter, my son, who's 18 years old now. Started out at USC as a freshman this year, is doing his thing out in California. Wow. So I'm very proud of him. But I guess I would say more specifically, my work developing the first independent police monitor's office as a council person in post-Katrina New Orleans probably is one of the most significant ventures and leadership posts I've had. So the Independent Police Monitor is a city chartered agency created by legislation that I led post-Katrina New Orleans around 2007 and 2008. And that is to be an independent body to oversee police brutality and misconduct in the city of New Orleans, which has a notorious history of police community relationships, especially with the African-American community. But since that office was enacted at that time, which preceded Black Lives Matter, which preceded what you've seen in the Trayvon Martin, et cetera, all of these things that happened since then, it helped to reduce the occurrences of police brutality and misconduct here in New Orleans. It hasn't completely reduced it, but you don't hear the same type of stories you heard in the Katrina time and early on in the police department's history in New Orleans. So I think in a small but significant sense, I helped to change the course of history in New Orleans, and other jurisdictions around the world and around the country have sought advice and admonitions from the Independent Police Monitor in New Orleans as it relates to how to do the same thing in their jurisdictions.
Wow. That is phenomenal work. And I'm sure we will hear much more about you, man. I know, you and I had a brief conversation and we'll talk more about where I think I'm headed. But I just want to thank you for being, sort of a trailblazer. Thank you for showing the way. Thank you for walking in excellence, right? I mean, that's what we as Howard folk try to do, right? Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose at this game, but we do the best that we can to walk with excellence and to be a sort of to have our ancestors proud, man. And I know that if you do nothing more than what you have done so far, you have made New Orleans proud, you have made Howard proud, you have made your family proud. And I know our audience, all those students who will be watching this video, appreciate you, man. Appreciate your time. And we'll be talking soon, man. I thank you for stopping by.
Well, let me say this real quickly before I sign off. I just want to thank you. You have a jewel, a treasure in your midst in Dr. Bailey. He is one of the great thinkers of our time. And just remember, Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge. Imagination. So I want you to think big, think global, think out of the box, move out of the box, and continue to evolve and be the great leaders that you are destined to be, especially under the auspices and the leadership of the great Dr. Bailey. So thank you so much for your time, man. And man, look, you've made my day and made me feel like I'm something, man.
I know that's right, man. You have a great day, man. Thanks for coming.
Yes, sir.
Wow, man. You know, it's always special to be able to bring you successful guests. And by success, you know, I am not a sort of a harbinger of sort of capitalist successes. I mean, you know, obviously James Carter has done all that, right? But I'm talking about people who love people, right? And people who sort of work on behalf of those who don't have much, of those who are on the backside of justice. James Carter is such a lawyer. And that's why I also brought in Michael Wright, and I'm glad he stopped in. Y'all already know the song of You in Ohio, right? 2, 2, 2, 3. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know the song, right? And so we're just excited for Michael Wright here in Ohio. We're excited for all you young lawyers. We're excited for those of you who are considering law school. And certainly we're excited that you've joined us here at Straight No Chaser. We're going to move right into our next guest here on Straight No Chaser. We have attorney Morgan Harper. You know, the lot I'm going to say about attorney Harper as we talk here. But the one thing you should know is that attorney Harper is an advocate, as we talked about, in the Charles Hamilton Houston School, right? I mean, she certainly is about the business of being a social engineer, of doing the work and making sure her voice is about the building and sustaining of a community, but the building of a newer community, a fresher community, a more accessible community for those who have been on the backside of justice. So Straight No Chaser, please welcome to me, a Columbus, Ohio sister, born, raised, and reared, our sister, Morgan Harper. How are you, sister?
Good. How are you? Thank you for that intro. I'm excited to be here.
Oh man, we just excited to have you here and to sort of make sure that the world, at least my world, the world that is a part of Straight No Chaser, who may not be on that sort of Venn diagram that includes your world, but that world now can kind of come together and expand that atmosphere so they'll know who Morgan Harper is. So with that being said, you remember, I think I told you this show is specifically geared to law students who are pre-law students who are considering law. Well, we know your background, right? Princeton, Stanford. Tell us a little bit, or just talk to the students for a couple of minutes and say, listen, I know you're considering law school. Tell us what you were thinking about as an undergrad at Princeton. Tell us what you were thinking about when you were saying, I think I want to go to law school. And then what was a process that you went through that maybe you can help some of our students go through?
Right, happy to. So first, I went to undergrad at Tufts. So just to make sure we're being clear. Yeah, but I did get a master's at Princeton. And, you know, for me, it goes back even earlier than that in terms of why I decided to go to law school. I, at a young age, got exposed to just the injustice of the US, that, you know, the economic segregation that just based on where you're born, what you look like, if your parents have money, determines your outcomes, and feeling like the deck is stacked against our community in a lot of ways, and wanting to understand genuinely, like, what is the system that has created this, and being able to advocate for a better system, just like you were saying in the intro. So I got to the place where I realized, like, okay, you know, I've learned about this thing called public policy. I'm interested in that. But everybody that I really admired when I began my career in Washington, D.C. was also a lawyer and had that background of analysis that enabled you to really, figure out what was going on, and also lay out an argument for why something should be different. And I just liked that skill set and the discipline of that, because I felt like it really gave you like a superpower to understand and persuade. So I ultimately decided to get a master's in public policy and go to law school for that reason, because I thought it would give me the tools to be the best advocate for our community, and to help to design a system that works for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And so would you recommend, what would you recommend law school to students, or would you say, stay the heck away?
It's funny the timing of this, because just yesterday I was talking to a friend who didn't go to law school, and he's like, I feel like everybody I know that went to law school complains about being a lawyer or how much debt they have or whatever. So, it depends. You really have to know why you're going. I would say, especially now, with just the expense of it, and and it was expensive when I went. I don't think that anyone really should go to law school and incur $200,000 in debt. Like, can't happen, right? Just based on the economy and everything we know about that, that's a burden that might be difficult to overcome. But if you have a really clear reason of what you're trying to get out of it, and you feel like law school is going to help you get there, to that goal that you have in mind, that's when you end up loving law school. And I really loved law school. And like I said, I got out of it exactly what I wanted. I learned how to think in a different way. People would always say that, like, oh, you think like a lawyer. I was like, what does that mean? That's just something people say. But once you leave it, you're like, wow, I have been formed in a different way and really developed just these tools of analysis that I never would have had before. And, and I think some people, whether if you were like raised in a family of lawyers, or you just naturally think in this like logical way, maybe you have it, but I know I was not, and I did not have it. And so that experience really took me to the next level, I would say. So, it really is important, though, that people know what they're getting into, because it's not fun exactly, right? I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a grind, but if it's helping you get to the next level of where you want to be, I do think it's worth it.
No, that's a good point. So you mentioned something that one of our previous guests mentioned before about knowing that you want to go to law school, right? Knowing that that's what you want to do. I mean, some folk, right, they just watch TV and they watch the movies, they watch TV, and they say, I want to do that. I want to do that. I do think that that's a very important sort of gem to sort of tell students that know what it is that you want to do. And so we'll talk a little bit about that later. So one of your firsts, right, post law school jobs was with the Consumer Protection Agency. And I know some of the work that they do, and a lot of it, as I think you and I talked about before, is the idea of predatory lending. In your initial conversation, you were talking about, being a public advocate, working in public service, and looking at law, that finding those spaces where you can advocate on behalf of those who have been the victims or on the underside of sort of corporatized greed or that kind of thing is important to you. Tell us a little bit about your work with the Consumer Protective Agency and other things that you did with them.
Yeah, so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created after the last financial crisis, because I think we are in the midst of another one, right? And less than 10 years later. But it was created after the mortgage crisis, when a lot of people were hurting, and we saw that there was an industry that had been exploiting people, working people, and getting them into subprime mortgages that they knew they would never be able to afford. And the bubble burst, and the impact was very severe. And so, when that agency was created, I was really intrigued because, I saw the impacts that were happening from the foreclosure crisis. I had previously worked in the federal government for a different agency and was really turned off, actually, because I was like, I've always felt this tremendous urgency, like we've got to go. I identified the injustice, and what are we doing to like rework this system to make it fair for people. But I felt that in the prior agency I'd worked at, that was not the vibe of the federal government. It was very bureaucratic. It was, no one was in a rush about anything. And so when CFPB was created, they said, we are moving with urgency to address the impacts of this financial crisis. We are trying to consolidate a lot of the functions that were spread out throughout the federal government to have an agency that is just focused on people and making sure that people are protected in these consumer financial markets, like credit cards, mortgages, payday lending, like you were referencing. And we are moving in a data-driven way to address real people's issues. And so I went there thinking like, wow, well, if this is real, then this is exactly what I think the federal government and every level of government really should be about. And luckily, it was real. So we were a team, when I was working under the first director's leadership, that was responsible for getting $12 billion back to 28 million consumers across the country who had been cheated, who had been taken advantage of. And a lot of what these companies are doing is preying off of people's problems. When you're hurting, and you're hurting because you've gotten evicted, or, you lost your job, or you got sick and lost your job, right? So, having trouble meeting ends meet, which 40% of the families in this country, only $400 send people off the rails financially, right? So not a large amount of money and not a small percentage of our population. There's no safety net. And so a lot of the companies, their business model is to take advantage of people in those moments. So we were trying to write regulations that would make people more protected, and then also sue companies when they had broken the law and needed to compensate consumers appropriately. So, a lot of good work happening at the CFPB, but, I just want to note too, from like a policy perspective, a lot of the reason why people are getting in those situations and needing these products is because we have an overall economic system that is not set up to work for the average person, and why people are vulnerable with just a small amount of money to having their life get derailed.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's real. And we can certainly spend a good amount of time talking about law and economics here. I do want to push back a little bit just to kind of, there may be some people in there, some students in here that's like, but wait a minute, don't people have free will, right? Don't people, if you took on a subprime mortgage and you went to the bank and you didn't read the adjusted rate mortgage aspect of it, or if you didn't know what balloon payments were after 5 or 7 years, then that's a you problem. That's not a Wells Fargo problem, right? What do you say about the issue of free will within free markets and individuals who are just trying to gain access to their American dream, but may not fully understand the process and get caught up by these predatory lenders?
Right. Well, everyone is in a position to make their own decisions, but we have to recognize that there is a power imbalance, and the companies are, they have an obligation to underwrite, and the whole purpose of underwriting, like checking the financials of somebody to make sure that they're going to be able to pay back loans based on the terms. That's a legal obligation, and it's trying to get at, will this person actually be able to manage this level of debt? And if your conclusion is that they won't, or you run a really short-circuited process to reach the conclusion that, they'll be fine, and you're not actually going through those steps, you're not actually trying to underwrite for understanding about their ability to repay, then that's a problem. Because actually, like when you do that at scale as a big mortgage company, a big bank, then you have the ability to not only send that person's life into jeopardy, but also, as we saw with the financial crisis, our entire economic system. And so that's a problem. And
so
go ahead.
No, sorry. No, I just learned something. So you said, and I wrote down, underwriting is a legal obligation, right? I was always under the impression that, underwriters were just a part of a culture, right? I mean, obviously they're an aspect. And so, that they can make decisions either way, but you're saying it's a legal obligation and not just a moral one. Is that right?
Yeah, well, and that's a lot of what the CFPB was getting at with new rules that were written, were about, it isn't just like some superficial exercise to go through. Like, you actually have to make sure people have the ability to repay.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's good stuff. And so then, to make this slight transition to the next question, so then when we think about, well, I'm not a party person, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, I don't like these kind of things. Here is an example, a very real example, where in many cases, party ideology or party platforms affect the way these particular type of laws are written. Is that right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, although I think there's some things that are almost like post-partisan, right? It's like, how can you argue with it's, not a good idea for people to be giving others mortgages that are going to sink them financially, right? Is that a Democratic position? Is that a Republican position? To me, that's just like, there's right and wrong. But I think you're getting at an important point, especially right now as we look at, what will be the future of politics in our country. And that a lot of people are frustrated with the partisan two-party polarization, all of that. And I do think it's some of these economic issues that we can all agree on, that I don't think it has to be quite as polarizing, because most people are benefited by, the financial system kind of like working fair. Most people would benefit from, not taxing us as much as we are, letting corporations off from high taxation rates. So these are things that I do think there's a possibility for real unity and strong coalition building across many different types of people. And that could hopefully bring a little bit more balance and, I don't know, rational thinking to our politics overall.
No, I mean, so again, Straight No Chaser, we are on with Morgan Harper, who is a consumer advocate, a political advocate, a social justice advocate. She is a wonderful woman who is an attorney. And we're going to move a little bit into we've been talking economics and law, but we're going to slightly move in a little bit more in the political realm. I always say, Morgan, that, not all Democrats are the same, right? Mm-hmm. And I have no problem identifying or admitting that I am a Democrat, right? Despite, in many cases, the ways in which sort of moderate, there's a moderate wing of our party, if you will, and the way in which that moderate wing at the state level, at the federal level, and at the local level, sometimes they represent little to no contrast, right, between them and some of the moderate Republicans, right? But I'm not ashamed to say that. But at the same time, I know that within our party, we also have what we call sort of the progressive wing, right? The wing by which sort of my mentor, Cornel West, taught me in terms of how to understand the doings and sufferings of people and the way in which the sort of the uber class sort of uses the poor, and the ways in which the poor are, as you talked about before, sort of being preyed upon. And so, if, and I don't want to lock you in here, but I know people refer to you as a progressive. In your understanding of a progressive within the Democratic Party, sort of what does that mean to you? What type of Democrat would you consider yourself to be?
I consider myself a Democrat that is trying to put people first all the time. I think we have had a tradition of politics for at least my entire lifetime that has been way too beholden to corporate interest. And we see it reflected in Washington and also at the local level of government, which sometimes I think people overlook, that those who are running as progressives, there are also a lot of people running at the state level, at the local level as progressives, that are coming in with that mantra of, at a minimum, what it means is you're not taking money from corporations, so that you will be able to put people first when you're at a table thinking about what policies will most benefit us in our communities. And that to me is the most unifying thing. And that's just keeping it real. I mean, like I said, the reason, right, actually, I don't know if we got to this, but something I say a lot is, a reason why I even got to the place of running for office, of, being a politician per se, is that I saw the limits of policymaking, that policy can only take you so far, that ultimately people that have the political positions are the ones that get the final call. And if they are more influenced by companies than they are by us, then we're always going to run up against the limitation of policymaking. So we need to get our politics back on track so that policymakers, who we know all the ideas that would solve a lot of the issues that we end up talking about, that make people vulnerable, that are making people hurt on the ground, we know what will fix it. It's just a matter of having the political will to do something about it. And that is a problem of our politics. And I think that that's something that a lot of people who identify as progressive would agree on.
No question. Hashtag put our politics back on track. I like that, right? And that's again why I'm such a fan of yours and why I so appreciate the work that you do, because you are unapologetic and unashamedly resistant to the ways in which corporatized mediums affect the lives of everyday folk, and in certain ways affect them in ways that are sort of disadvantageous to their everyday lives. Unfortunately, we all know, and those who you made reference to this, those who may not know, unfortunately, this year you did not win the Ohio 3rd Congressional primary, and you were running up against, sort of an institutional moderate in Joyce Beatty, who also serves right on the Congressional Black Caucus and all that kind of stuff. But you did a phenomenal job, and we thank you for that. I'm just wondering, now that we are approaching November, we have the big, obviously Biden race. Beatty is going to be back, as it appears. Are you hopeful about, what the work that Democrats have in front of them? Are you skeptical? How do you feel about the state of the Democratic Party going into November?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of us as Democrats agree. I mean, the most significant threat to our country right now is the continued occupation of the White House by a person who will not disavow white supremacy, who has authoritarian tendencies, and we've got to get rid of him. So that's certainly, a lot of what I'm focused on over the next, now I think we're at less than 30 days, right? Is, we need to win, and we need to win big, so that there is no question of what the outcome is, because this guy will do anything to stay in power. And so, that's the thing that I think I am focused on. Now, once we get rid of him, and hopefully a Biden-Harris administration takes over, then we need to get back to policy conversations and what exactly are going to be the solutions that finally get at the root causes of a lot of the economic issues that people are suffering from in this country. And that is going to take a lot of sustained pressure. It's also going to take, the right people being in position. So another thing that, because there's so much going on, we don't even necessarily have time to think about, but already, there's transition talk, like who is going to be occupying the Economic Policy Council for Biden? Who will be in charge of Treasury? What will the policies be that get us out of this current, recession? And are they going to be on the side of people, or are we going to continue to see corporate welfare that, as I posted a story today on social media, that we see that who has benefited most in this era of the coronavirus? People who are already really rich, right? Millionaires, billionaires.
No question.
And so those personnel decisions are also very important. And that's something that we have to continue to apply pressure on. But right now, the most important thing as Democrats is that we're coming together to get rid of Donald Trump.
And which is why I think that Donald Trump, and I'm going to say this kind of in good faith, I think this is why where he may be tone deaf when it comes to the economy, right? I think because he's looking at millionaires and billionaires, right? And saying, look, we're doing well, they're doing well. I don't know if he's doing well, but his cronies are doing well.
Who knows?
And because he always he makes reference to the stock market, right? The working people ain't in the stock market, you know what I'm saying?
No, exactly.
And the stock market is not the economy. And so when he says the economy is doing well, look at the stock market, I always say to myself, look, he thinks he's right. And in his analysis, he is right, because the stock market is, for the most part, doing well, right? And so I think that's why you're right. We have to get him out, because not only he's tone deaf, but I think he's blind. I think he's negligent. I mean, I don't want to get into him. Right?
Yeah, I know. I don't want to spend too much time either, but he's callous. I mean, over 200,000 people have died unnecessarily from this mismanagement. And we can't go on like this.
Right. So tonight we have the VP debate. I'm looking forward for my Howard University sister, Kamala Harris, to sort of go ahead and just knock old Pence back to the Indiana farm where he came from. But I don't know. What do you think? Are you okay with Kamala Harris?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, one, Biden Harris, we got to get rid of Trump. So I really, really, really hope that we get there with this ticket. And, it's also obviously great to have a Black woman for the first time going to be on this type of stage for the vice presidential debate. And she has the West Indian connection. My mom's from Trinidad, so that's really cool too. Didn't go to Howard, but we've got that connection, so I'll take that. I think it's going to be interesting to see how she responds to a lot of the talking points that, I think Pence is a little bit better perhaps than Trump at coming off as kind of reasonable while still saying really crazy things. And I just, hope that she can counterpunch that and call it out. And, I think another important point as people just take in content over the next few weeks leading up to the election is we have the president who is throwing out talking points that are trying to divert people from the real issue, which is the utter failure of their management of the coronavirus. Pence is going to try to do the same thing tonight, though he was the head of the task force that was supposed to be managing our country through this crisis. And we have people at the local level in, whatever community you're watching from, who I'm sure right now are on local media, also trying to spread the same talking points, that it's protests that are the real threat to our country, not the mismanagement of the coronavirus at every level of government. So we've got to be really focused over these next few weeks and I want Kamala Harris to cut through it and set the tone for what we're all going to be doing. It's the BS, we've had enough. Now we need honesty and we need to get rid of this guy.
That's real talk. That's real talk. So what are you doing now? I mean, what's going on with your life? What are you doing politically, progressively, socially? You want to come join me as Straight No Chaser? What's going on?
Oh, we're going to be co-hosts? Okay. I didn't realize that was on the table. Okay.
Hey, man, you shut me down. I might as well shut up and just let you do it, right? But what's going on with you right now?
Yeah. So, I started a new organization called Columbus Stand Up and pretty much
Come and stand up?
Columbus Stand Up.
Columbus Stand Up.
Okay. Focus on a lot of the same things. Because like I said during the campaign, nothing was going to be solved just by electing me. One person isn't going to solve the generation of work we have on our hands. And that work continues, whether or not I'm in office or not, right? And so that's the grassroots organizing, that is direct service, helping support people through this really difficult time. That's also helping people with political engagement. So we co-hosted, last night with Freedom Bloc, a candidate and issue forum to talk through some of the down ballot issues that will be voted on this November, and trying to just get out in the community and help people engage in the political process is a big goal. Masks, we're distributing masks. We have these vote masks that we were doing over the last few weeks. And I just really want to continue to be out in the community. So that's a priority. And then from a policy perspective, I'm getting more involved in the corporate antitrust policies. What will actually do something about the disproportionate power that corporations have over our economic system and our political system, and working to advance some of those issues at the national level as well.
No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, we have
and I have one more thing I forgot. Can I say? Because the other thing, I'm partnering with the Ohio Women's Alliance, which is another great group. Just want to make sure people are aware of it. Building up grassroots women of color leaders throughout Ohio. And that's why, with them, with Freedom Bloc, both of these organizations are about building independent political power, because you can be a Democrat, but also care about building independent political power, specifically in the Black community. And I'm, really excited to have some of these partnerships at the statewide level as well, as we try to connect with folks all across Ohio.
Yeah. No, actually, the Ohio Women's Alliance, our common friend, obviously, sort of was talking to me a little bit about that. We'll talk about that off the air. But listen, thank you so much for your time. I don't know if you know this, but I went to Harvard for graduate school, so I know about Tufts very well.
Oh, nice. Or two stops away. Shout out,
right. Shout out to Tufts Medical Center, who took care of me and my lung issue back in 1997, right? But no, certainly, thank you, Morgan Harper. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your unwavering care for the poor and for the working class folk. Certainly, I'm gonna get down there and hook up with you and, to chat with you and see what I can do to assist you and vice versa. And I am just so proud to finally have met you officially, but I've certainly been watching you from down here in Springfield. And so I appreciate you so much, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. No, it was a real honor. I appreciate you having me on, and I'll be back, co-host or not.
No, you for sure. My engineer here, my student here, like, come on, bring it tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? So certainly we'll be talking soon. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Ladies and gentlemen, Attorney Morgan Harper. Like, listen, I mean, all you got to do is look her up on the internet and know the kind of voice she is in Columbus and the state of Ohio. I'm trying to associate myself politically with folk like Morgan, right? Folk who fundamentally care about the poor, who fundamentally care about those on the backside of justice. That's why we had folk like yesterday, like Julian Mack in Toledo. That's why we had them on here. And I can go down the list. Look, Rhonda Johnson in Trotwood that's trying to knock the heck up out of Phil Plummer that's somehow, the representative. And so we're just, there's a lot of folk like that that we are just certainly trying to knock off so that we can have not just the mantra Turn Ohio Blue. Yeah, we want to do that. But LaRhonda Jackson, I'm sorry, I said Johnson. But certainly want to turn Ohio blue. But really we want to, turn to our hearts. And we want to know that there are people out here like my colleague here at Wittenberg and Cynthia Richards who care about people. And we need to make sure that those of you in the Springfield, New Carlisle, Enid area, you vote for Cynthia Richards tomorrow. Go vote for her right now and make sure that Cal Kohler is out of office, right? So that's just what this conversation is about. Those who have used their legal degrees in various aspects, but the common thread about today so far has been those who are working on behalf of justice, and not just justice as we think about in courtrooms, but in legal courtrooms and criminal situations, but in economic situations, in civil situations, in corporatized situations. We need to make sure those of you who are interested in law school, it's not an either or proposition. You don't say, I study with Dr. Bailey and I'm a justice law and public policy minor and I'm gonna go to law school so I can be a civil rights attorney like Charles Hamilton Houston or like Johnny Cochran or like Attorney Keith or blah, blah, blah. That's cool, right? Or as we know now, like James Carter, that's cool. But you can also do that in corporate America. Morgan Harper just told you, work with antitrust. Work with a consumer protection, work against predatory lending, make sure that you have issues as it relates to fair housing, make sure you work on issues as it relates to the environment, right? You can do that with your law degree too. This is what this conversation is, how to best use your law degree. And speaking of law degree, we're gonna move to our final, remember this is our 75-minute special, but we're gonna move to our final guest. And just a couple years ago, I saw her, or she was graduated from here, obviously, but she is a 2019 graduate of this institution, Wittenberg University, where I teach. And I'm excited to have her on the show. Second year law school at Quinnipiac, Jesus Christ, at Quinnipiac University, Madison Pangburn. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. I'm sorry for messing up your second school, Quinnipiac. I don't know what's going on. I'm just excited. I was really trying to get into a little preaching mode, but then I realized I got another guest, so I had to back down. So it was just kind of this quick kind of energy that I had to back into. The last time I seen you, good to see you. I see your hair flowing. You're looking like a lawyer. I see you. I see you. Yeah. The last time I think I remember. It was just a couple of years ago. We were in our existentialism class, right? And we were discussing Kierkegaard and Camus and Dostoevsky. And you did a paper, I believe, on Nikolai Berdyaev, right?
Yes, I did.
I think I remember that, right? And then your thesis was on Ayn Rand. Is that right?
No,
that wasn't you. Okay, what was your thesis?
I did Hannah Arendt.
Hannah Arendt. Okay. Hannah Arendt. Yeah. So no, I mean, so you certainly were a double major here, political science and philosophy here at Wittenberg. So shout out to all the political scientists in the room. I have to tell you again, Ed Haseki paid me $100 to give him a shout out to you. So Ed Haseki was one of your professors who appreciates what you do and wants to say hello to you too. So.
Well, hi, Dr. Hasky.
And no, he didn't pay me $100, y'all, because I mean, although you could pay me $100 and I'll shout you out. I ain't got no problem with that, right? But anyway, let's move on. You are a second-year law student there at Quinnipiac, right, on the beautiful campus of in Hamden, New Jersey. I mean, Hamden, Connecticut.
Yes.
And so talk to us about your, year and a half now experience. What has it been like being a law student?
So I definitely picked a very unique time to go to law school. The first semester was a pretty traditional experience. I didn't pick any of my classes. It was everything's weighted on your final exam. You work long days, long weekends. And then my second semester, we get to spring break and we go all online. So I'm experiencing online law school, which has been crazy, honestly, because you're taking all of the skills that you learn your first semester for law school, where you're trying to make outlines and you have study groups and you're trying to build these connections with your professors. But, now there's this whole disconnect where I'm just looking at you over a screen. It's harder to engage. But, the classes, they worked out. I have to say they're more interesting now that I've been able to pick my own classes. So right now I'm taking jurisprudence and Native American law and introduction to representing clients. So I'm learning more about topics that interest me, as well as more core classes like evidence and federal income tax, which I wasn't that excited about, but I'm doing it.
Right. So coming out of Wittenberg, and remember, this is Straight No Chaser now. We ain't here and we ain't working on behalf of Wit right now. We're working on behalf of the show. But I just want to ask you, like coming out of Wittenberg, dual degree, you go to a fine institution like where you're at now. I mean, do you feel that you were prepared to go to law school? Do you wish there was something that you would have learned or had more access to, or do you feel like Wittenberg did a good job to prepare you to do what you're doing right now?
There are times where I feel like I wish I had taken a gap year and maybe worked as a paralegal first, because there's this weird disconnect where you go to law school and you're learning to take these exams. You have generally 3 hours, you're shut in a classroom, you can't really get up to use the bathroom, you kind of just black out and you take these exams and it's closed book. And then I have this internship and it's nothing like that. They're never asking me to just sit down for 3 hours straight and give them every piece of knowledge that I know. So there's this part where, I don't really know how to file something or, write a specific kind of brief. Like that's not something that was like covered in undergrad.
Right.
And also you just have to learn a completely new language.
Right.
So I did have a really nice background in writing, which has been really helpful, but it takes time. I'm still learning every single day in my classes and at my internship. It's just, I don't know, sometimes I really wish that I had taken some time to learn more of the court systems out here.
Yeah.
What exactly is the formatting? Because in the end, that's really important.
Yeah, I'm glad I just wrote myself a note. One of the things that we don't have here is something like a technical writing for pre-law, right? I remember when I was at Howard, not that I didn't know if I was going to law school or not, but I took a pre-law writing class. And so the entire course was writing briefs and arguments, and that was the course. And so although I ended up didn't go, obviously, I don't know if you were in class, I think, but our first guest, James Carter of the Cochran firm, he was at Howard with me, and we would be in these English, that was in the English department. It was an elective, but you could take a pre-law, what they call technical writing pre-law. That was the name of the class. And I'm sure what you're saying is that having a class like that would have been helpful, or like you said, having that gap year. So certainly that's something to think about, right? Because there are people, as you know, October we're here, and there are people who just last week took the LSATs, right? And they're in the process now of doing applications. You already told them what a 1L looks like and what they experienced, at least the first semester. The second semester, as you said, was different. But like, what other tidbits can you give them about the application process, about what to expect, in that meantime? Do you have any tidbits that you want to give any pre-law students right now?
So I applied a little later because I was debating actually taking a gap year. I had done an internship the summer before, and I was like, I know I want to go to law school, but I'm not sure I'm ready yet. And then I came out of that internship being like, no, like I really think I'm ready to go into this. But I didn't take my LSAT until November. And then I waited to get my score back. And then it was like December, January. So I'm scrambling like in the fall thinking, okay, I need to get recommendation letters and I need to get my essays together. And I think part of me was scared, so I was procrastinating, and I would recommend not procrastinating because it makes it so much more stressful in the end. But just taking a day, you write out your essay, and I had just a massive file of essays that I was going to send to every single school that I was applying to, and I knocked it out. I sent it over to Mike Madison, and I was like, what do you think of this essay? And then he sent it back to me. I tweaked it. And then I was like, I can't sit and stew over this. I can't worry that I'm not going to be accepted because, someplace will, or I'll just reapply. Like, it's not the end of the world. And I submitted them, and some schools got back to me really quickly. Some didn't. I was rejected from places. I was waitlisted, and the rejections hurt. But in the end, I chose Quinnipiac because they gave me a really good scholarship. And it was between Quinnipiac and Catholic. And for Catholic, it was going to be the cost of housing in DC and full tuition. And that just didn't seem like a good choice for me. So I definitely think there's some value to focusing on the financial aspects of law school, because it is expensive.
No, that's real. And I'm going to make sure in my closing remarks I make reference to this, but a shout out to Mike Madison. You gave him a shout out. If you are watching this right now and you are in undergrad, find your writing center, right? Find when you're writing your applications and you're doing your essay, don't just have your mama read it. I mean, your mama might be a great writer, but your mama also love you. You know what I'm saying? You want to have an objective reader. Shout out to our Wittenberg, award-winning Wittenberg Writing Center under the leadership of Dr. Mike Madsen. And shout out to all the students who work with there. And you already been told that here, this second-year law student took her application and her essays to the Writing Center. So don't be ashamed to take that. I did want to ask one question about that before we move to this final question. What you did you do different applications for different schools, or was it kind of you kind of tailored each application to the school itself? How did that process go?
So people disagree on how you should do this for the essay. I decided to leave like the last 2 or 3 sentences to be tailored specifically to each school. Okay. So I would go and I would look at their mission statement, what their values were, and I would create a statement of, here's who I am, and I would insert their values, and I would say, and you can do this for me, and I want to do this with your school. So they saw that I was invested in their school. I knew their values, and I wanted to use them to become the lawyer that I want to be.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, that's good advice. That's good advice. So I'm sure you've done internships, and like you said, and you have jobs. Tell us a couple of the type of internships that you've had since being in law school. So
since being in law school, I currently work for Gordon & Rees up in Hartford doing insurance defense. It's been really interesting. It can go from little research jobs to hunting down giant case law. I'm actually going to go meet people in the office in person for the first time today. The interview was incredibly interesting because they're a bigger law firm. I was very nervous for it because it is a law firm that's in all 50 states. And I was like, this is a huge opportunity. And it was an hour and a half, and they passed me around to like 6 different attorneys, and each one questioned me. And I was so worried that they were going to ask me about, do you understand this concept of law? But the internships that you get are generally just to see like who you are as a person, and if you can talk to people. They're there to help you learn the law, to help you figure out how to be a real attorney, not just like a law student. So you're going to learn the law with them. They just want to know that you can hang out in the office, get along with people, and, kind of function as a normal human being, because sometimes attorneys have the reputation of not being like human. They're just
vultures.
Not really good with your social skills.
Right.
I think a lot of firms are really looking to make sure that there's like that human quality in the attorneys that they're bringing in.
Question. And you are a fundamental representative of having a wonderful human quality, a sort of a humble spirit, very, very bright. And I know that the world is your oyster. I know I personally am proud to have had you in classes, proud to say I know you. Glad you even responded to me. A lot of folk graduate from here and was like, Dr. Bailey, I don't want to hear your voice no more. You know what I'm saying? So I thank you for answering the call and coming on the show. We at Wittenberg, we wish you well. We're proud of you. And I thank you again for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. So listen, Straight No Chaser, man, it's a pleasure being able to serve in my capacity as pre-law advisor and director of our Justice Law and Public Policy program. Having a show like this sort of allows me to sort of meld the two together, have these sort of national conversations with very important people for an audience who are friends, and some of you aren't friends, but who have come to appreciate Straight No Chaser. That's one thing. But it's also something to be able to bring on the show people you're associated with, people you've met along the way, people you've mentored, or people you've taught, and to see the great things that they're doing. For somebody like me, that means a lot, right? It just means a lot to know that our future is in the great hands of people who care first, right? I'm a caring dude, right? I understand there's gonna have to be some smart people out there. That's cool. Give me somebody who loves first, right? And let's work from the position of love. And so right now, if you're watching this, if you have a friend, you have a family member, if you have a colleague who wants to go to law school, make sure they watch this. Make sure they watch our first show, right? Our first show, which came on a couple weeks ago, where we had Miss Shaylin Williams and her group, the Luminous Consulting Group. We'll put that in the chat so you can kind of revert to them. Luminous Consulting Group. They are a pre-law advising group. They are probably the most reasonable of all the LSAT preps, and they'll even, she told us on the show a few weeks ago that she takes you through your 1L year. So they'll bring you on as a LSAT prep client, but then they take you on for your entire the process of writing the essay, write all that they assist you with. And so a good sister out of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm just messing up all the states today. Birmingham, Alabama, Miss Shaylin Williams, and the Luminous Consultant Group is somewhere you should take a look at. Listen, we had a great show today. James Carter, Attorney James Carter, began our show, which is one of the top 100 Black attorneys in America, who is a civil trial attorney who has won verdicts up to $70 million, right? Was on our show today. I forgot to ask him to give me a donation to the show. You know what I'm saying? We got to holler at him back. But no, we appreciate that, brother. We had a special pop-in guest with Attorney Michael Wright here in Ohio. We appreciate the work you do, brother, caring about us. Then we had the great Morgan Harper out of Columbus, Ohio, who talked to us about her work. Please look her up. And we left with a Wittenberg University student, 2L, second-year law student at Quinnipiac University in Connecticut, right? Tonight, I think at 9 p.m., the vice presidential debate. Pray for me because I'll be coming right into it after giving a lecture for St. Xavier University in Chicago. I'll be lecturing online for them tonight. Then I'll go right into that event. Next week, we'll have a special show. We have Congress, a woman who's running for Congress that will be on the show on Monday, right? And so we are looking forward to interviewing Vanessa Enoch. And then on Wednesday, mark your calendars. You've seen the commercials already running on the show. We have the Dr. Brittany Cooper, the crunk feminist, the most probably celebrated Black feminist in America right now. We have her on the show. And so we're excited for next Wednesday. Listen, have a great week. Be safe out there. Thank you for hanging with us for 75 minutes. As we close this week, I want to thank, obviously, our engineer and Brother Stephen Muhammad. I want to thank our student co-host here and assistant here, and Sister Jasmine Evans. And I just want to thank all of you for supporting this show. Thank our sponsor for this week. We thank you for the anonymous sponsor, brother, a good colleague of mine. And no, it wasn't Ed Haseki. I didn't tell his name. It wasn't him. But Ed, if you want to sponsor the show, brother, no. But God bless you. Take care. Stay strong. A little bit over.